Good to see everybody, and welcome to session 7 of the International Academy. That means there's only one session left, right? You've made it this far, and hopefully you've learned a lot of useful things. We very much enjoy like the communications that we've had with you and the ideas that you guys bring to these sessions as you're learning more about the tools. So a reminder that what we're going to go ahead and set up for today, again, same guidelines. We will try to address as many questions as we're able to in the chat during today's session. So please feel free to use the chat and keep your audio muted during our presentations today. A reminder that you can find resources for all of these tools, as well as digging into the information behind these tools on the iTree website, and you can always reach out to us at support if you have any questions on any of the tools. Again, our page for this year's Academy is where you'll find videos from previous sessions, so that if you're interested in reviewing the materials that were made available for those sessions, as well as, again, those videos and any other information you're looking for related to previous sessions, you can find on our dedicated page for this year's Academy. And speaking of which, we want to remember that what we did last week was talk a little bit about what it means to put all your data together for an eco project and imagining what you need in order to figure out the method that you're going to use for your inventory. We've submitted that data, we've thought through project needs. So now we're going to turn around and see how those results look and how we can think about what the reports on this information can offer us. So understanding what the data means. And what we're going to do is look at a few ways that not only, how do we access the report and what does each one differently demonstrate, but taking a look or thinking about what do we do with it, right? When we have these results, what are the ways that we can most impactfully communicate what we can see in the data to most meaningfully advocate or move forward with a project? So again, before we wrap up today, we're going to talk about the setup for the action plans. Make sure that you go ahead and visit the Academy webpage to see a template for that, which is sort of, just a set of prompts that can help you think about what we're asking for with an action plan. And you can focus on any of the tools, but some of the things we're going to take a look at today are what you can do with the results and how you might go about that, and understanding that that can take different considerations with respect to time and resources, as we've been mentioning the whole way. So we will hear from some work that has been done in Bangladesh and in Mexico in particular to take eco results into to the next level and how those plans might look. So with that, I am going to go ahead and hand this off to Jason, who's going to get us started today, taking a look at how we can think about results.
Thanks, Krista.
There
I'll
you
go ahead
go.
and
Okay.
share my screen here. And with any luck, you can see iTree Eco.
Yes.
So yeah, we've spent a long time here over the last 3-4 sessions talking about iTree Eco, how to get data into Eco, how to set up your project, and those are all really important steps. Today, I'm going to do some walkthrough demo on the reporting in iTree Eco, so try to highlight some of the key reports that you can get out of Eco, some of the interesting things you can see. But after that, we're going to sort of switch gears to how you take those results and really put them into action. And that step from going from doing all this work in your iTree Eco project to transitioning to communicating those results is really one of the most important parts of doing an iTree Eco project, because you do all this work to collect data, to run it through iTree Eco, to analyze your results. But if you just keep those to yourself, or you're not real good at finding who your audience is and the best ways to share that information, you're really missing out on kind of the impact that you can have with an iTree project. So as I go through these reports today, really think about how you could use these in your community, how you could use them to sort of advocate for trees, advocate for policy changes where you work, talk to people who live in the community about the benefits that trees provide. So with that, I'm just going to jump into a project that I have here. This is a complete inventory project. So we've talked a lot about complete inventory versus plot projects in last session. So this is a complete inventory. This is actually a street tree inventory. So this is measuring all the trees in a community of interest. In this case, the community is Rochester, Minnesota. This is a medium-sized town in the US here. And this is their street tree population. So their city arborist has some folks go out and measure the street trees, measure where they are, and measure those key iTreeEco variables. And we could import that into iTreeEco to get some results. So I'm just going to go through some of these key results. One of the first things here, I'm on the reports tab now. So last time we spent a lot of time on the data tab. We did that whole data import. And then we moved over to the reports tab and we submitted our data for processing. And I've already retrieved the results into here. So you can see we've got all these results information. All these reports are available here. And there's actually over 80 reports in iTreeEco. So we're not going to go through every single one this time around, but I will try and highlight some of the key ones that we have in here. So first thing, really useful place to start is always this project metadata. And I can try and zoom into these so that you can see them a little better. That's a little too much zooming. But this is really nice for telling you what's in your data set. So you can see here my project name. You can see we've got 9,716 trees. So this can be a nice way to check, oh yeah, I've got all the trees I want in this project right off the bat. And then we've got a whole lot of project information. So this is essentially, again, this is that metadata. If you remember back to when we were talking about iTree database, you entered in all of this information if you were doing a new location. And this is going to tell you exactly what information is being used to localize iTreeEco to where you are doing your project. So we've got things like that leaf on off day, things like the climate region. We talked about all this information when we were talking about iTree database a few sessions ago. Our population, tell me exactly which pollution stations I'm using, which weather station I'm using. So again, you can have all this information if you need to report out anything to folks where you're working and you want to know where that data came from, where the underlying precipitation came from or pollution data. All of that is in this metadata report, including things like the monetary values used to convert those tree benefits into currency values. So lots and lots of really great information in here in that metadata report, just to sort of orient you to where your project is. Another report, sort of the first place that everybody goes, is we have this kind of canned written report. So I'll go ahead and open this up so you can see what it looks like. This written report, it looks a little dated, but it's actually a pretty nice place to get a whole lot of information in one place about your project. So since we've got almost 10,000 trees, it takes a couple minutes to load here. But you can see this is actually a PDF report that's been formatted. It's got some really nice summary data in the front. So it's just some total information about your whole population of trees, the total amount of pollution removal. And you can take this report and you can edit it and you can do whatever you want with it. So in our case, since this is a complete inventory, it's just a summary of those 9,716 trees. And you can end up with some sort of interesting numbers when you start to do this. So it says we've got really low tree cover, but that's because our city's larger than just the street tree population. So this is just what percentage of our city is covered by our street tree canopy cover. And anytime we want to talk about canopy cover, it's always better to use a tool like iTree Canopy that we talked about a few weeks ago. So a lot of nice summary data there. And then it goes down and it's going to give you your benefits, your tree structure and value. And some of these things are really nice if you just want to take some language. So maybe you're really interested in carbon storage and sequestration. Well, there's some language here that describes what that information means. So you could just grab just this text. And with all these reports, you can always save and export these. So if I click on this Save File button here, you can see that I can save this. I can save it as a PDF, but I've also got other formats I can save it as. So any of these reports you can save as an Excel spreadsheet. So those spreadsheets can be opened in anything like Microsoft Excel or even something like Google Sheets if you just want to use free software. Or you can save this as a Word document. So some of these figures, you might not like the way they look and you might want to reformat them. Well, you can do that in that Word document. You can put in your own figures. You can change the text, just, as long as you give credit to iTree as the source for a lot of that text. But there's a lot of great information in there. There's a lot of information. Let me scroll up here to where it had my table of contents. In some of these appendices, there's really some nice information about how the iTree Eco model works. So if you need just some text describing how different ecosystem services are calculated within the iTree Eco model, and that understanding iTree document is a little too detailed, this appendix of the written report has some higher level information about that, so how air pollution removal works, things like that you could grab and use if you were doing any reporting. So from there, that written report can be a really nice place to start, but we may want to drill down into really detailed things depending on what type of project we're doing and who we're trying to communicate those results to. So we talk a lot with iTree about the benefits the trees provide, but there's really a lot of nice information in here about the structure of your urban forest, whether that's your complete inventory or your plot-based project. So I'm just going to go through a few of these. You can see even when I just click on this drop down, we've got over 20, around 20 reports in here on this composition and structure. So we can look at things just like the structure summary here is a really nice place to start. And you can break those out by strata. So we talked about strata previously. There aren't strata set up in this project, so it's just sort of one big citywide street tree inventory. So there's not going to be different strata, but you can real quickly see some of what that structure some of what that structure information is. So it's going to tell me the number of trees of each species and the leaf area they provide. So you can see our most common tree here. So out of that almost 10,000 trees, 1,500 of them are Norway maples. So when we start to just looking at structure information, this is telling me that we probably have way too many of these Norway maples because they represent a really large chunk of that population. So that might be a place to start thinking about how would we think about diversifying the trees we plant going forward. Other things in here that you can just see real quickly off the bat, these apple species in the US, typically we plant ornamental crab apples. So those are going to be flowering crab apples. They don't get real big, maybe 3-4 meters high. They're not going to be huge trees. And one of the things you can see is they don't actually have a lot of leaf area. We talked in the past about how that leaf area really drives a lot of those ecosystem services. So if we're going to plant a whole lot of those ornamental trees, we may want to think about how that's going to impact the benefits we get in this leaf area. Just in these structure summaries can help us to start to think about that. You can see when we go down to other trees like this sugar maple, we've got almost 200 fewer trees, sugar maples, than those apples, but they've got almost 5 times as much leaf area. So those trees are just doing a whole lot more work per tree. So when you start to think about planting trees that provide the most benefits, this structure summary can really help to get you there. And again, you can export these tables and edit them any way you want. So if you don't like the colors we use in here, or you want to delete a few columns, go ahead and hit that save button, save it as a spreadsheet, and edit it however you want to share with other folks. So that's that population summary, or I'm sorry, the structure summary by species. One of the other structure reports I really like is this DBH class chart. So this can again help us start to evaluate our population of trees and what we have. And there's a few different ways that it summarizes the data in here. And I actually like one of these graphs down a little bit lower here. So this sort of 3D graph here, this is just telling me what percentage of each species, and these are the top 10 most common species in my inventory, going to tell me what percentage of those trees are in these different diameter classes. So over here, we've got 0 to 7.6 centimeters. So those are going to be relatively small trees. And if we look at our American elms here, we have 30% of our American elms are in that diameter class. So what this can tell us is that where are our big trees? So you can see here, we've got these green ash trees, and those are a lot of our relatively large trees, but there's no small green ash in here that are going to replace these big trees when they eventually die or need to be removed. And in the US, there's a really good reason for that. We have an insect, the emerald ash borer, that actually kills nearly 100% of our ash trees where it's present. So in most of our cities, no one is planting more ash trees yet. just because they're going to die out. So we can start to think about, well, this is really a lot of our large trees. They're probably providing a lot of benefits. What are going to be the small trees that over time replace them? And you can see here we've got things like the ginkgo tree in that smaller group, American yellowwood. So this isn't a super common tree in a lot of our cities, but it is a nice replacement for those ash trees. So in this city, they're pretty progressive in thinking about how to keep that species diversity and what they're going to do going forward. We also talked about the Norway maple as kind of our most common tree, and you can see that in the back here. But there's not a lot of small Norway maples, and again, that's because they've decided they want to diversify their population. So as these Norway maples sort of age out, they're going to plant other trees so that they have more species diversity, which might make them more resilient to things like pests or climate change or extreme weather going forward. So you can really get a lot of nice information on kind of that planning, the trajectory of your urban forest or the population you measured from this diameter distribution graph. So this is really one of my favorite graphs. And if we keep scrolling down here, you can actually look at individual species. So again, we can see this is just for that Norway maple. We've got a few smaller ones here, but mostly they've kind of stopped planting them 10 or so years ago. So they're going to eventually age out of the population. So you can look at individual species. And again, all the way down the bottom, we've got a table of that data. Actually, I'm sorry, it's under one of these other reports here. We could open a table. So if you wanted to make your own graphs, you could export just the table data and make your own graphs there. One other one I'll show here before we kind of jump off of this is this importance value. And importance value actually combines kind of that how many trees do you have of each species with that leaf area, which we know really drives a lot of those ecosystem services. So it's taking the percent of the population, so that's the percentage of the number of trees. So in our case, 15% of our trees in our measured population, our street trees, are Norway maples, and they account for 21% of our leaf area. And it's just adding those two columns to come up with an importance value. So here you can see that our most important tree in both numbers of trees and that percent of leaf area is that Norway maple. So, and you can see it's about twice as important when we talk about this importance value as any other species. So again, we probably have too many of those and we need to get more diversity in there. And moving down, you can see that green ash, which we're going to lose all of, has an importance value that's pretty high too. Even though they're just 5% of our population, they're about 12% of our leaf area. Eventually, all those trees are going to die unless we treat them to keep them up. So we may want to make a plan for what we're going to do when we lose all those ecosystem services. And just like I mentioned, those apple species, which is our second most common species, they're way down here in importance value. Not way down, but they're, sixth, seventh in importance value, even though they're our second most common tree, just because they don't have a lot of leaf area. So again, this can help us decide which trees we want to plant going forward, which trees are doing the most work out there. And then, we can start to plan about if we've got way too many of one species, how do we get more diversity with trees that are still going to provide a lot of leaf area. So these are some of the reports in that composition and structure that I think are pretty interesting. I'll just highlight one other one here before we move along, and that's going to be this relative performance index down here. So relative performance index is actually telling us how those trees are performing in the landscape. So this is this RPI number here. And when it's higher than 1, it means those trees are doing better as far as tree health goes than the average tree in our inventory. When they're lower than 1, like this black locust, then they're doing worse than the average tree in our inventory. So if we start to think about how we're going to move forward, if we're going to plant new trees, how do we pick which species we might want to plant? And Akshat actually talked some about this last week with his Delhi project, trying to decide which trees would be most beneficial going forward. Well, this tells us at least which trees are going to be the healthiest. So we may want to look through here, and this tells us the percent of our total population. Where do we have trees with a relatively high performance index? But they don't currently represent a lot of trees in our inventory. So we might look at things like this catalpa tree down here. It does a little better than average, and it only makes up 0.7% of our current inventory. So maybe we want to plant more of those going forward. We could also look at things like the leaf area they provide, and I'm pretty sure for the catalpa that's going to be pretty big. So that might help us come up with a species list that we're going to try and plant going forward. So there's a lot of great information in that structure under the structure tab here. I encourage you, if you started an iTree Eco project, if you handed one of those in for homework from session 5, go ahead and submit those reports and start to poke through some of these results, especially some of the ones I didn't touch on, and you'll start to see some of these patterns emerge and help you plan how to apply those results going forward. So other results here, we'll go ahead over to benefits. This is the big thing that iTree does, is calculate the benefits of trees. And we'll jump down to the benefits summary here is always a great place to start, just like we started with that composition summary. So we can look at this benefits summary by species. And I'll zoom in a little here. So this is just telling me for each one of my species, how many trees do I have? And then what are the total benefits of those, all the trees of that species in my inventory. So our Norway maples, again, we have a whole bunch of those. And this is what those trees are doing. So they're storing almost $200,000 worth of carbon. They're sequestering, so that's every year they're taking up another $3,000 worth of carbon, or 21 metric tons. And similarly, the avoided runoff, the pollution, these are the big ecosystem services that we talked about when we first started talking about the ecosystem services that iTree provides. So you can go down there if you want to drill into any one of those ecosystem services in a little more detail. Maybe you're really interested in the hydrology effects. So you can see this includes that same thing. So it's still by species here. And it includes our avoided runoff number. So that was in that previous summary table, but now it has more information here. It has things like evaporation and transpiration. Those things can impact human comfort. So if something like urban heat island is really important to you, the trees that are doing more evapotranspiration are going to have bigger benefits for human comfort, as well as the shade they provide. So you can start to really dig into any of these detailed reports if you're really interested in what's going on with those benefits. A few other things that we sort of haven't talked about is that iTree can do UV effects. So this is how do trees contribute to reducing incoming UV radiation. UV radiation can have negative effects on human health, so it can cause increased skin cancer rates. And this is telling me that in this case, in these trees in Minnesota, under those trees, you're getting a little bit more shade protection factor. So that's essentially what the number is on your sunscreen than when you're not under those trees. Again, this is in Minnesota, so that's kind of the northern tier of our US states. So maybe UV isn't a really big deal there, but maybe where you work, maybe you're in a tropical area, maybe you get a lot more incoming UV radiation. I know this was a big issue in Australia, so they were really interested in these numbers. Maybe skin cancer rates are high where you are. So this might be a benefit that you want to highlight. So there are lots of other benefits in here that we could look through, but again, we're talking about 80 different reports, so we'll stick to just some of these high-level ones. One of the other things I want to point out is you can change how these are displayed here. So I'll go ahead and look at an individual level result. So individual level results are actually going to give us, instead of summarizing it by every species, it's going to break it out to every single tree. So we can look at a summary of our tree benefits here. And this is going to give us the benefits for every single tree. It's going to take a while because we've got 10,000 trees here. But it's going to tell us essentially every tree in our inventory, what are the ecosystem services it's providing. So when you see things like tree tags listing the ecosystem services of an individual tree, this is where you would grab that. So for this one American basswood, it's telling me it's 45.7 centimeters DBH. It's got a replacement value of $2,000. So if we remove that tree, that's an estimate of how much it would cost to replace it with a similar tree. And then it's got all our ecosystem services. So carbon storage. We didn't measure the distance and direction to buildings, so we're not getting some of these energy savings related things like carbon avoided and energy savings. But then we have a total here for the annual monetary benefits of what these trees are doing. So again, lots of information in here. If we had collected the latitude and longitude of these, this would be the table that we exported to make a map, just like I did that Google My Maps, map of our tree locations last time, this is the table I used for that. If you ever want to change between what's displayed here, like maybe you don't want to use the common names, you can toggle those between common name and scientific name right here at the top of the screen. Probably shouldn't have done it on this big 10,000 tree table, but it'll relatively quickly switch between those common names and scientific names. So whichever one you want to use, same with the metric and English units. You can toggle between those as well really easily. So whichever you need to get out of these reports, you can get to them really quickly. So again, these individual level results can be really useful, especially when you start to talk about individual trees in a complete inventory when you're going to report these out to the people who live and work around those trees. So it can be really nice. We talked some about putting tree tags up near government buildings so that can help you advocate when the people who work in those buildings see the benefits of the trees around them. This is where you would get some of those numbers to do those kind of tree tags. So lots of great information in here in these individual level results. So this is talking through these trees. This is all for a complete inventory. But since we also talked about plot-based inventories, I do want to go ahead and show how the results might vary a little bit if you start to look at a plot-based inventory of trees. So one of our example projects in here, we talked about example projects way back when we first started using iTree, is from Mexico. And it's this Merida, Mexico down here. I'm not going to open that one because I have one with a few edits in here. But you could follow along. You could look at that exact project to see similar results to what I'm going to show here in a second using that example project. So I will go ahead and open the project I have here. And just to show you, just to highlight a few things that are different when you start to do a plot-based project. So again, we're on our reports tab here. I had submitted this data previously and pulled in the results. And we're going to jump right into our metadata report. In a plot-based project, it's got something a little nicer here. It's going to tell us how many of our plots we had completed. So in this project, you can see we have 647 total plots. We collected data on 592. When you do a plot-based project, it's pretty common to not collect data on all the plots because you may not be able to access all of them. And Akshat talked a little bit about having trouble accessing plots last time, and we talked through some of the options for how to get around that. And you can see then the total number of trees that were measured in this project. And again, it's got all that background metadata for how this project works, how it was localized for that location. And then you can see in this case, we've got a whole year of frost-free days. This is a pretty warm location. They don't get any frost or snow down there. This is on the Yucatan Peninsula right there near the Gulf of Mexico. So from there, we can just jump through a few of our reports so you can see how these things differ. If we go to the written report, now instead of this report being just for the trees we measured, so in that example I used before, it was for those almost 10,000 trees we measured. In this case, it takes those 2,500 or so trees we measured and expands them to the whole city. So now we get an estimate that we've got 2.3 million trees in that city based on our plot-based inventory. And our tree canopy cover estimate is much more accurate since we've measured random plots all throughout the city. So you get a lot more information that, again, applies to the entire city. And since we did this in Mexico, when we were setting up our benefit prices, we could use local monetary values. So these are in pesos. All this information is in here. Beyond that, again, it's summarizing these. iTree Eco is doing all the statistics to take that sample of plots and expand it to the whole city. So now all these results that we have in here, if we looked at things like our carbon storage, this is applied to the whole city now, not just to the trees we measured. So that's one thing that's really important to keep in mind when you do those plot-based projects versus a complete inventory. A lot of the results will be somewhat similar, but this project actually has strata in it. So we could look a little more detailed if we wanted to see how different strata, so they have these districts that the city is divided into. And we can see how the species differ across those different districts. So again, we can switch back and forth between scientific and common names. And we can see, we scroll down here, we can see District 4. These were the total numbers of trees and some of those other structure summaries like leaf area. um, and leaf biomass, and we can compare across the various different districts what those totals look like. So again, there's a lot more information or a lot more nuanced information that you can get, and it applies to the whole city. So both by stratifying and by doing that plot-based sample, you can get information that allows you to kind of make some more nuanced recommendations. How do we want to do things differently by district across our city? So there's a lot of benefits to doing those plot-based projects, although they do come with a lot more work in collecting some of that data. So one of the things that's in here that you don't get when you do a complete inventory is we can actually get diversity. So this is really based on the plot data. So this would be a measure of our biodiversity, our tree biodiversity. And this is summarized by each one of those districts, each one of the 8 districts in our cities. So we can see where we have the highest species diversity. So maybe that's a place where we don't need to concentrate a lot of our efforts in at least diversifying the trees we're going to plant going forward. And we can see sometimes we have really low species diversity. And these are just a bunch of different indexes that can be used to measure species diversity. So that can be another nice outcome that you get with plot-based projects that you don't get when you do a complete inventory. Beyond that, we can again look at our benefits and costs. And some of these summaries, again, are going to tell us a little more information when we look at them by stratum. So this will be our those same benefit summaries. So this is, again, species by stratum. So we can compare how our different strata are doing. So which district is providing the most ecosystem services. And since this is a plot-based project, we can actually look at some of those things per unit area. So if we wanted something like our carbon benefits, maybe our carbon storage per unit area, this is just going to compare those districts, and it's just going to tell us which ones are storing the most per hectare. So this really quickly gets us to understanding how our ecosystem services might differ by district. And it's not just telling us the number of trees. So maybe District 8 is a really big district and District 2 is really small. So that might affect how those benefits differ between districts. But in this case, since we're doing it per unit area, we can see the District 2 actually is getting a lot less ecosystem services per hectare. So we probably need to, if we're going to focus our efforts on improving the tree canopy and the tree benefits in any district, we probably want to focus them on District 2, since they have the lowest benefit per unit area. So a lot of great information can come out of those benefits reports. Again, tons of results in here. There's just one other one I want to show because I think we talked about this early on, but under this pollution and weather, you can actually see the data that go into things like the avoided runoff model, things like the air pollution removal model. So if you want to look at something like this is the raw and source data. So this is the raw data telling us how much air pollution is coming into our models. So we can sort of click through the different air pollutants and see what that data looks like. So this is the PM 2.5 hourly data that's used within those models for every hour of the year. And you can look at that as either a chart or a table. This can be nice if you ever want to see if there's any kind of gaps or missing data. So maybe we want to look at rainfall, just see when there was rainfall. This is a pretty dry location, so we don't have a ton of rainfall. But we can look at then the same thing, the ecosystem services. So our air quality improvement. Again, this is going to be for every hour of the calendar year. So we can look at each one of our pollutants up here and get to some really detailed level results. And you can see in some cases, we actually have negative air quality results versus the positive ones above the line here. And that can be to all sorts of reasons, but in really dry locations, what happens is the wind sometimes blows stuff like particulate matter off of the trees back into the atmosphere. So we're looking for rain events that would wash some of that particulate matter out of the system rather than have it blow off of the leaves back into the air. So again, lots of great information in there. And I got just a couple minutes left. I just want to talk real quickly about the forecast module. So forecasting can be really great to make the case for trees going forward. And that's what our forecast model in here does. So just real quickly here, you can go through this on your own, but I just want to show a couple things. So we have default configurations that we can put in here. So if I hit new, it's just going to create a default configuration. You can see what that looks like by clicking on configuration summary. So you put in how many years you want to forecast for, in this case, 30 years, and some mortality rates and how long you are without frost, because that affects how quickly trees are going to grow. And these mortality rates vary by healthy trees, sick trees, and dying trees. So if I wanted to just run with this configuration, I would click on this run forecast. This takes about 5 minutes because we've got those few thousand trees and we've got to grow every one for 30 years. So I'm not going to go ahead and click on that, but I will click through a few of these buttons here so you can understand what's going on. When we set up those basic options, this is here where we set how many years we want to project for, and this is where we set those base mortality rates. All of this is described over here in the health panel. So if you want to run one of these forecasts, you can definitely look through that health panel and set those up. We can set some annual mortality rates that are more focused on maybe we want a single stratum. We may want to kill more trees in that stratum for some reason. Maybe we know that those trees are planted in worse conditions. Maybe it's denser buildings, so we know that more of those are going to die, maybe in District 2 versus District 7. So we can set any of those up in this mortality rate. Or maybe we want to plant trees. So in our case, maybe we want to do this for that District 2. Maybe that's where we're really going to focus our efforts. Maybe we're going to plant 3,000 trees a year in that District 2. They'll all start around 2 centimeters. And we'll start in year 1 and we'll plant them out every year for the next 30 years. So we could add that to our scenario here. And then if we go back to our configuration summary, you can see we've now got this planting scenario that's added in there. You can do the same thing with extreme events. I mentioned that this city is down on the Gulf of Mexico. So if we wanted to do an extreme weather event, we can pick something like a hurricane, and we can say when that event might occur. Maybe it's going to occur halfway through our projection, and what percentage of our trees it's going to kill. So we can model that out as well. So there's lots of things you can do in here. If there's important things you want to project out over time, or you want to compare projections, you can create copies and compare different scenarios. But I went ahead and did that planting scenario for that District 2, and I just want to show you a few quick results of that. So we can look at things like the number of trees over time. So this tells us over the next 30 years. Zoom out a little bit so you can see the whole table here. Over the next 30 years, this is how many trees we expect to have. So why do our trees go down over time? Essentially, we're not accounting for all the new trees coming in. So lots of times there might be natural regeneration, trees that are just going to be seeded in and grow and come into our population. And we're not accounting for those, or trees that people are going to plant just in their own yards, their own property. So we didn't account for all of those in our planting scenarios. So if you really want to get realistic, you may need to account for those trees. But if we do nothing and no new trees get planted, this is what's going to happen. Not too surprising. But we might want to look more in a little more detail. So we talked about how leaf area and tree cover are really important. So we can look at our tree cover area and how that changes over time. So this is for our whole city again. And over our 30 years, we can see that our tree cover drops off a little bit early on. But we must have some small trees in our population that are going to grow pretty rapidly over time. So it kind of peaks our tree canopy cover around year 15, and then it's going to drop off again. So if we want it to not drop off, we probably need to keep planting small trees earlier on. And we can even dig further if we wanted to look at that by stratum. Hold on, I want to click this one here. So this is showing us each one of our strata. It's the same overall graph, but now it's this stacked bar, and we can scroll down and look at our individual districts. So we can see how District 8 changes over time, or District 3. And District, where was our District 2? This is District 6. We get down to our District 2 where we were going to plant trees. We can see that we kind of get a little bump here from our tree planting, but it still decreases over time. So we may need to focus more on planting trees in that district. The same thing, you can look at the benefits and how those change over time. So if we wanted to look at something like carbon storage by stratum, we can see that carbon storage actually goes up. So we're going to have a lot of relatively large trees somewhere out in the future, but we may eventually start to drop off, and you can see that's just kind of starting here. So again, it's going to make the case to plant more trees, and we can do that by district again. If we scroll down, we can see how the different districts are performing. in that carbon storage over time. So again, District 6 must start with more smaller trees since this increases more rapidly over time. So there's a lot of information in there. There's a lot of different reports in iTree Eco. It's great to look at how they differ between complete inventory and plot-based project. Hopefully that helps you make some decisions about which project type is right for you. But really start to think about how you would use these results in any of your reporting, in those action plans that we'd like you to put together by this Friday. So with that, Anna, I think I will hand it over to you to talk a little bit more how to take these reports and turn them into action.
Thanks, Jason.
Sure.
Share the screen here. Okay. Alrighty. Okay, yeah, so Jason's been, some time kind of going through the results, and I know it's a lot, and, I'm still learning every time, I hear Jason goes through these and when I'm playing around with the application, but again, a good intro to get you familiarized with the type of outputs that you'll get out of Eco, and I'm gonna now talk about what you can think about how you would communicate these outputs from either Eco or MyTree or Canopy, any of our tools that you decide to use in your community as part of your action plan or in your future work. So we kind of divide or think about these ideas of how you might share the results into kind of a hierarchy. So first is showing that trees provide benefits. So, we all have been, you've been learning for the past, few weeks now about tree benefits, or maybe, you already understood this from your work, but that can be a pretty, novel idea to a lot of people that, they understand like, oh yeah, it's nice to sit under a tree, but they don't think about that it's like reducing their UV exposure or, how trees can relate to flooding and things like that. So that can be really powerful just to start communicating that, trees are not, they're not just nice. They also have a lot of a lot of environmental benefits and economic benefits to communities. So that can either be through education. So from, if you do work related to school with children or with even college students that, here a lot of professors will teach their students how to use Eco and things like that. Or it could even be, with general outreach and communication in your community. So that can be to a more general audience, such as with using the tree tags and things like that. Or it can be preparing kind of we call them white papers, like a paper that you would, or a document, I should say, that you would share with, say, a government official that you're trying to communicate with them, why planting trees is important or things like that. So, but yeah, at base level, showing that trees can provide benefits outside of, the intangible, like just feeling good to have trees or be around trees. The next is assessing what you have. So if you're, already on board, trees are great, but you want to know more about your tree resource. So how many trees does your community have, and how much what the canopy cover is in your city or place that you live. And with Eco and with our tools, you can then translate that into how much benefits they're providing to your community. So that can be, either reporting the amount of carbon, getting taken out of the environment, or maybe how much savings they're contributing to, avoided runoff, for example. And this can be especially important for informing people who make decisions around managing and caring for trees, such as policymakers or other type of officials in your community that are part of that decision making. And the next can be helping make a plan about, after you go beyond understanding your trees, your tree population and their benefits, about how you're going to think about managing them. Whether that's, as Jason showed, that you're like, well, I actually need to plant a lot of trees because I only have, most of my trees are older, and are at risk for dying out of age or because of a pest or something like that. Or it could be thinking about where the trees are in your community. So you're seeing that some communities have a lot less trees than others, and that can help you, with your decision making about where to plant trees or where to do your outreach around why maintaining trees is important, and thinking about where to maximize tree benefits. So if say we've heard from Akshat about air pollution in Delhi, and improving air quality is very important there, right? So something that is important for Akshat and people in Delhi is to maximize the air pollution benefits of trees. So thinking about how you would maximize tree benefits for the issues or the kind of things that are important in your community. So now I'm going to kind of go through some of those examples through these different tiers or this hierarchy of action plans or ways that you can take these results and put them to work in your community. So the first is, as I mentioned, engagement and outreach. And we've talked about these tree tags, and one really easy way to make these tree tags is through MyTree, which we've learned about. I think it was before the holiday break, but this is you see really easy that you can do this kind of even on the spot, really, if you're able to just estimate the DBH and the identify the tree. You could use this information, which is the same as you would get in iTreeEco. So you can, do this for a couple trees in your neighborhood, or if, say, you have a captive audience, so like you're working with a group of people that you're teaching them about trees. This is an activity that a lot of people do, is showing them how to use MyTree and then making these tree tags that get placed in prominent places where people are walking around or hanging out at a park with their kids and stuff like that. We've also seen people, this is an example of on the bottom right of a billboard that they sponsored to put up on a busy road so that people can, it's just one sentence, right? Like they get 900,000 benefit and cooling of their city. And as people are driving by, that's just all these people get to see this message, and it's just an idea that can get them to start thinking about why trees are good, and that the benefits that they provide. And something like that would obviously require doing more of like an eco project that would span a larger area, but just some examples. And we actually have some templates that you can use that Dr. Dave actually provided. So we have the link for those there. So you can go ahead and use these and kind of use the MyTree app to fill in this information and print them out and put them on trees in your community. And we've also had other people who have created their own because, maybe they want to emphasize different things about the trees, or just, are really creative and it is something that they want to do. This is an example from a partner, a person that we work with, Dr. Jenny Garden from Australia, and she actually created a tree trail. So kind of a interactive way that of placing the tags on trees in a park where people go and take their kids and their families and hang out. So it also, it prompts them to do a tree tag selfie. So, another way to engage people with the tree tags. And there's actually a link to a video that they did an interview with people hanging out at the park, and you can kind of, hear kind of the impact that the tree tags have on them, on seeing them and their opinions or about trees. So this is an example of a larger scale tree tag initiative or campaign that I think it was 12 organizations that partnered to do this campaign. And now that I think about it, actually some of you from Ukraine maybe have were participants of this tree tag campaign. But basically they all decided that they were going to put these tree tags on trees in their communities on a single day. So they picked a day and they made their tree tags with trees in their communities. And then they all went out and placed them in visible areas where people, again, would be walking by in markets or commercial centers. And they also mapped all the tree tags in this map that you see here. And you can go to the website and see all those locations. And, so they had this hashtag. So it was kind of a social media campaign as well. And I think it got picked up by some news sources in Europe. So, again, this took a lot of coordinated effort, right, across a pretty wide area of all these different organizations. But this is actually a LinkedIn post from one of the organizations that did the tree tag campaign in Poland. And this group got to go out and do the tree tags, but others did it because there was flooding in this area. So they write that it was especially important or significant that they got to go out and do this while all this essentially natural disasters are going on. Kind of highlighting that trees are important part of mitigating those disasters. And so it's something that these people that participated and got to do it will sort of remember in light of that was going on in the country. So yeah, definitely check that out for inspiration. So another way that people use iTree results is by creating infographics. So this is an example from the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society and PECO, which is an energy company in Pennsylvania. And they had a partnership with the Horticultural Society for planting trees that they provided $300,000 for planting trees. So they kept track of all the trees that they planted, and then they used iTree to quantify the benefits that all those trees would provide over 20 years. So they get, the amounts of, rainfall intercepted and things like that. But then with Eco or with iTree, they were able to get the dollar amount. So over the 20 years, those 18,000 trees that they provided, we're going to provide almost $1 million in benefits. So that's pretty powerful, right? Especially for an energy company and a good investment to say that this money that they spent on planting trees for the community would return that much back in benefits for that same community. So this is another example here on the left from this is actually from a Davy company that did this assessment of canopy cover in North Carolina. And I thought it was unique the way that they parsed out the benefits by person, so per capita. So they calculated the benefits for the entire, this was for a county level, and then they basically divided it by the population, which is over 1 million people that live in this county. So they can say for every person living in Wake County, they're getting almost $3,000 annually in benefits per person. So that's again a pretty good return on investment for this community of how much they're getting from their trees in just these ecosystem services. Not to mention that I actually used to live in this area, and it was incredibly wooded, and it's called they call it the land of the pines, the Oak City. Like, it's all about the trees. So it's really a really culturally significant part of the city of living in this area, in addition to all those benefits. And this other infographic is from Baltimore Tree Trust that plants a lot of trees in their community. So this was just a summary for 1 year of their work, where they planted, I think it was, 1,500 trees, and they estimated the benefits over 20 years. So this is really, important as part of their communication, because they're a nonprofit organization, to show the impact of their work, that they're planting these trees, but they're also going to continue to give back to the community, which is of course important. So just a couple more examples. This is a bookmark that's kind of showing, more general benefits, just to kind of share that information in an easy way. And then this other one is, from DC, from Washington, DC, the capital, where they were trying to highlight that pretty straightforward, that bigger trees store more carbon. So they mapped or graphed out the amount of carbon stored by these 3 different species and their inches, their DBH size. So it's a really straightforward way for someone or for people who aren't thinking about graphs or thinking about things like that to see like, whoa, like these really big trees store a lot of carbon and they're really important for DC. So again, showing the importance for taking care of these older trees that even though, it might be more expensive, it might be harder to take care of older trees, they are providing a significant amount of ecosystem services to this community. This next one is also from Australia, from our partner Jenny Garden, and she did a complete inventory for this park. So, kind of similar, to the projects that you've all been learning, but the goal of this project was actually for community engagement. So in many places, with development, a lot of trees get taken down. So they were thinking about how they might affect the way that people think about trees. So for this project, they actually they created these tree tags, which instead of focusing on the monetary value, they kind of provided more snippets of information. So, homes shaded by trees can save over 10% on cooling costs. So not super specific, but just kind of like a general knowledge of like why trees or the benefits that trees could provide. And they, we're looking to kind of change people's opinion and their behavior about trees on private land. So, again, a lot of the times it's easier to just cut down a tree than to work around it or to trim it or things like that. But they were really concerned with maintaining those trees. So they wanted to see how these tree tags could affect their behavior or their opinions. So they actually also conducted surveys for people before they went into the park and then afterwards to see how these tree tags could influence their opinion or if they change their opinion. So kind of a neat way to educate and engage people, but also get some information back from doing a project like this. Another way that the results can be used is for influencing policy. So this is an initiative highlighting the Million Trees initiative in New York City. So they had a street tree inventory and they had a budget of, they knew exactly, how much money they were spending on the street trees, and using iTreeEco, they were able to calculate that for every dollar invested in street trees, they were getting $3 back in benefits. So they're like, wow, that's a great return on investment. So the mayor at the time, Michael Bloomberg, who is a very wealthy man, he's like, well, he recognized that what a great investment taking care of and planting trees was. So they, went all in on this initiative that it would be a priority for New York City to, plant and take care of trees. So this was a policy that was implemented for the city, and they actually now map their trees through this New York City street map. So there's a link to it if you'd like to explore, where all the individual street trees are mapped, and they actually show the iTree benefits as well. So per individual trees, and there's actually a summary for the whole city, and they have a way to also record tree care. So that's a way to engage people in New York City to kind of feel like a connection, like they're taking care of these trees. And in New York City, a lot of people don't have a lot of they don't have a backyard, they don't have a place where they have their own trees, so that this kind of forms a connection to to trees and the environment in a place where there isn't a lot of green space as well. So a neat example there. And this is another example using ECO that Jason actually participated in, or led, if I'm not mistaken, maybe. But this is the Philadelphia citywide assessment, and they used a plot sample inventory. So Philadelphia is a major city in the United States. So, oh yeah, there's Jason at the at the bottom. He doesn't look very happy to be standing in that wetland or whatever, measuring those trees. But they completed this assessment, and from the results of this eco assessment, they were actually decided to stratify it. So I mentioned in my previous presentation last week a little bit about stratification and how that can help you gain some further insights into your your project. And they stratify their project by parkland, so city-owned parkland specifically, and they found that 9% of it covered 9% of the area of the city. But even though it was only 9% of the area, the trees in the parkland accounted for 40% of carbon storage and sequestration. So relatively disproportionate amount of the carbon was being stored in those parks. So information like that helped the Park Service, or the organization that takes care of the parks, advocate for that they should get funding to take care of those trees, because again, the larger trees are storing so much more carbon than little trees across the landscape, or even investing in planting new trees. These trees are already doing a lot of work. So that's an example of how, again, both stratification, but how these results can, help inform those decisions for someone, for a government official who has to make these decisions about, well, why am I giving, how do I divvy up my budget when all these people are asking me for money, when, you're showing that the city-owned parkland is contributing a lot to the community. And from the same example, or the same project of Philadelphia, they were also able to look at species, break it down by the species, such as Jason has showed. So he mentioned the emerald ash borer and the ash trees that are susceptible to this pest. So they broke it down again from the same report, and the ash trees account for 7% of their tree population. So that's pretty significant for this community, along with all those benefits. So this information motivated them to preemptively look at sampling these trees, and kind of assessing which trees were maybe more at risk, or posed a risk to people if they were to die because they were to get affected, that they would pose a risk to safety or to property. And also motivation to kind of take care of the older trees, because again, as we know, the older trees are providing more benefits. So it would be a bigger loss to the community if these older ash trees were to die basically because of this pest. So again, ways that the results can inform strategic management and those decisions about managing the urban forest. This is, again, another example from our friend in Australia. So they actually were using iTree Canopy in this instance, and they, had a goal to increase their canopy in the city. Charles Sturt is currently the name of the city, and so they used canopy to measure the changes in canopy cover over time. And they were spending a lot of money planting trees and taking care of things like that, but they weren't seeing the results that they were expecting. That they were they're putting a lot of effort, but the canopy was still declining or not improving as much as they'd hoped. And by actually breaking down their assessment over public versus private lands, they were able to see that a lot of their canopy loss was actually coming from private land. So they, decided to have a campaign or more outreach for improving canopy cover on private land. So that's, moving beyond planting trees in public areas. It was like talking to house owners and people who, had trees on their property, to encourage them to take care of those trees and plant those trees. And I think this is the last example, that I have from actually Maria Ariave, who's not here today, but we wanted to share her example of combining actually different tools. So she used both iTree Eco and Canopy to look at make an assessment of the canopy cover using Canopy, using iTree Canopy, but also the general species and carbon sequestration and the benefits and stuff. But then she also used another tool called StewMap, which is by the U.S. Forest Service. It's not an iTree tool, but it basically maps the number of organizations and that are working with issues around urban forestry and well-being and stuff like that. So actually, Krista is involved in StuMap to some extent. So if you have questions about that, she's a great resource. But so she combined these different pieces of information to create this analysis looking at neighborhoods in Medellin in Colombia, where that had both, she called it being high in the environmental variables, so related to the tree canopy and species diversity and things like that, and a high number of organizations, or the number of organizations working in those areas. So the green areas would be places that both have high, for example, canopy, and a high number of organizations working in those areas. Whereas the red ones are neighborhoods in Medellin that have low let's say an urban forest canopy and a low number of organizations working in those places and everything else in between. So both looking at the environmental assets of these different neighborhoods, but thinking about which organizations are not getting outreach to these places and kind of helping inform where these organizations should be looking to doing more of their work. So again, a wide breadth of things, of directions that you can take, but overall, thinking about what outcomes you would like to see with your iTree project, and thinking about what audience you're trying to reach in your community. And as you can see, there's lots of ways to kind of combine these tools and all these results that you can get out of ECO to help you tell your story. And so these are just some examples, and hopefully next time we'll have your example to add to this session. So I think we're about time for break now. So
Yeah, that was great, Anna, and I think it leads us right into talking to Sahadeb after the break about his project in Dhaka City and all the different iTree tools he used. So we will go ahead and take our 5-minute break. Good timing too, I think. So everyone, I think we're right at the end of our 5-minute break here. So I'm going to go ahead and hand this off to Sahadeb. Sahadeb went through our academy a few years back and has presented this information before, but it's a really cool project in a really large city. So it's always interesting to hear how they're using the results and putting their iTree inventory and all the iTree tools really to work in their community. So go ahead, Sahadeb. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Jason. Good morning, good evening, everyone. So welcome. And today I will kind of share our experience of urban tree inventory for Dhaka and how we have used iTree for this inventory. So before jumping into the main technical things, and I would like to give you some ideas how Dhaka looks like. So Dhaka is the capital of Bangladesh, and like our neighboring country India, it's the Delhi, and Dhaka is also one of the most polluted cities around the world. And traffic here, it's a kind of never ending, and it's another hotspot for climate vulnerable among climate vulnerable cities. And heat waves during the summer, it's also extreme here in Dhaka. And the population is kind of very crowded, and the buildings, the settlement are also very clingy in the city. And despite of all the negative aspects, Dhaka is also very colorful and vibrant city during the springtime, especially when the flowers, colorful flowers come in. And it's also very famous for the street food, the traditional food items. And it is also culturally very rich. Like you can see the last footage, it's a Poila Boishakh celebration, the celebration of Bengali New Year. So it's a very colorful and vibrant city. So,
Sahadeb, sorry to interrupt just for 1 second. It seems like maybe if you have like the chat window for Zoom open. It's just blocking a little bit of the screen. I don't know if you can minimize
Sorry,
that.
sorry.
Oh, no problem.
Is
It's
it
always
good
hard to
now?
tell. Yeah, that looks a little better.
Okay,
Yep. Thank you.
thanks. Then, how did we started the urban tree inventory in and for Bangladesh? So it was kind of at the very beginning. We said with almost all the stakeholders that are relevant to the urban trees for Dhaka city. So the city corporation, the academia, universities, the Bangladesh Forest Department, and the civil society. So almost more than 14 different organizations attended um, our stakeholder consultation and to find a way out that how should we proceed with the urban tree inventory for Dhaka city. And we decided and what to look for and what stakeholders to incorporate into this inventory. So what was our motivation to conduct the urban tree inventory for Dhaka city? Uh, so currently the information we have for Dhaka before this study. So what was the information available? Some studies they claim that the tree cover was 2%, and some other studies it was kind of 8%, and some other studies they claimed it was 16%. So for the city planners, the information it was not reliable. So we needed a full-fledged inventory, so that the policymaker, the decision maker, can really know what is the status of urban trees for Dhaka city. So that's why to establish a baseline for Dhaka, we conducted this urban tree inventory, and and obviously to motivate to influence our decision maker. So we evaluated the three benefits, because instead of talking about numbers, it's always better to talk about the money, how much monetary benefit we can get from the urban trees. So it's always easier to convince them. And obviously to conserve our city dwellers for conservation and tree planting and city greening activities. So it was another our motivation to conduct this urban tree inventory. So how we proceeded, what was our methodology, how we started. So as you know, Dhaka is you may have known, so it's a heterogeneous city. For heterogeneous areas, if we directly conduct the simple random sampling strategy, then it might create some errors. So we went for the stratified random sampling. We at the first stage we classified satellite imageries to set up the zones, like the tree dominated areas or built up areas with some scattered trees, and other areas like the water body and marshland and the bare surface areas. So we classified that, then accordingly we determined how much sample we needed, sample plots we needed, and we for the sample plot size we followed the I3 guideline and 11.35 meter. And as a big inventory team work for us, around more than 30 people. So we developed a training manual, what to teach them, what are the items that our data collectors need, what are the capacities. So that we highlighted this in the training manual. Also, we developed a standard operating procedure, so that in the later time, anyone who want to conduct the inventory can follow our guideline also. And we process the hourly pollution and rainfall data from the that we receive from the Department of Environment of the Bangladesh government and the Bangladesh Meteorological Department. So we used almost all the latest tools that are used for a high level inventory. as you may have know. So Bangladesh Forest Department, especially the RIMS unit, Resource Information Unit, they conduct the national level tree inventory, the NFI. So they are backed by the FAO technical team and the US Forest Service, FI team, and University of Maryland. So that's why we took the advantage of RIMS unit and to get all the equipments and capacity building or of the data collection team for our urban tree inventory. So it was a food grade training. The day one, we provided our participants with the theory and background of tree inventory, especially the urban focus. And in the day two, it was a demonstration, hands-on practice. And the day 3, 4, it was a kind of how the data collectors can use the inventory equipment. If they are weak in some part, then we reevaluated and kind of re-instructed them. So it was at the capacity building stage. Then how did we do the fieldwork and the teamwork? Kind of at a time, there were 8 groups worked in the field. Each group had three data collectors, mainly from students of undergraduate and graduate students from forestry, botany, and environmental sciences. And each 4 group was supported in the real field by one taxonomist, one renowned taxonomist in Bangladesh. And there was 2 taxonomists altogether, and another civil society organization, Green Sabers, was worked with us to manage the data collection team. And RIMS, the Bangladesh Forest Department, was involved, and Compass program of the US Forest Service mainly provided the support. We and the data collection for we have 2 city corporation in Dhaka. One is Dhaka North City Corporation, one is Dhaka South City Corporation. We collected data in 2021 and analyzed in 2022. And for Dhaka South City Corporation, we collected in 2022 and analyzed in 2023. And finally, our report was published in 24 at the end of the year 2024. So it was not easy to conduct all the field work, because as you can see, some in the rooftop there are some trees on top of the 10-story building. So it was kind of very tough to measure the data, and it was hard to identify the tree species in the field. So we took the herbarium, and during the navigation, the GPS network GPS was not receiving the network, so it was kind of hard for us to navigate. So many difficulties like getting access, and Google Map ended us in nowhere, that there is no road. So lots of challenges. So how we tracked our big team, so those who are working in the field. So we used a real-time monitoring tool. We customized the Google My Map and used it, like you can see. So who is working in which plot, and if we needed a taxonomy support or logistical support, so that we can move with them, or whether they are going to the plot or not. So this kind of thing we were able to track using the Google Map. So for analysis, mostly we use the i3 for analysis, and also in addition we use the R scripting for additional analysis, like especially in the QA QC part, and some additional analysis I will talk about it later. And in the IT process, as you already know, so we use the field. If I get a glimpse at a glance, so the tree inventory data that we receive from the field, then the species data already available in the database, so which are not available in the database, and we submitted in the IT database for additional species inclusion. We around submitted 36 species from Dhaka. And hourly pollution that we collected from Bangladesh Meteorological Department, city information from city corporations, and weather data we collected from Bangladesh Meteorological Department. All together, we provided it to ITRI for this analysis. And if I give you a summary of the results that we received, the tree cover is almost similar in both city corporation, comprising 10.5 in Dhaka North City Corporation and 10.8 in Dhaka South City Corporation. Also, the carbon storage, pollution removal, carbon sequestration, oxygen, and avoided runoff. So this kind of information, I'm not going to read out all the numbers, but this category, these results gave us enough opportunity to present our research to our chief conservator of forest, who is the highest decision maker from the Bangladesh government. So it was very convincing that urban forestry is very we should focus on. And when we communicated this with our city corporations, we received a lot of appreciation and the value of the work. So it was very much useful for us to convince them about the importance of urban forestry and what we can do and how we can move forward. And in summary, if I give you so what we have done so far using ITRI in Bangladesh, so we have completed 2 inventory. One is for Dhaka North City Corporation, another for Dhaka South City Corporation. And we completed another census. It's for Bangladesh National Botanical Garden, which is the central hub for nature for National Gene Bank in Bangladesh. We kind of measured around 44,000 trees there in the botanical garden, and around more than 30 people. They work for around 4 months continuously to measure all the trees. And we trained more than 250 people to 250 people about the urban forestry and ITRI. And as I mentioned, we submitted new species to the ITRI database, around 36. We for a QA QC we developed a script. We work with lots of organizations who are now taking the urban forestry movement further. So what was our achievement? So the urban forestry became before this census and inventory. So urban forestry was kind of not seldom spoken of. Now after that it was kind of became that top of the town. So if I give you an example, we arranged a urban tree inventory training, a 2-day training. Around more than 800 people registered for the training, and kind of actively participate. Around 350 people completed that training, because due to the Microsoft team limitation, we could not accommodate more than 350 people. So it is one of the biggest training we conducted related in the forestry sector, or the overall environment sector in Bangladesh. So if the ITRI and the urban forestry it did not become that much popular, then this kind of interest we might not have seen. And based on the finding, when we shared our finding results with the top management of Bangladesh Forest Department, then they officially announced that Forest Department will establish an urban forestry center for Dhaka. So it's a kind of big achievement for this urban tree movement. And we kind of engaged a lot of organizations. Now they are working working to get fund for urban greening, more urban greening and engagement work. So it's kind of a vibe that we were able to get them and institutionalize about them as so ITRI is kind of taught as a part of the lab in the forest mensuration course in the Institute of Forestry and Environmental Sciences, University of Chittagong. So it's kind of the urban forestry and the IT tool. So it's become institutionalized. So at the next generation NRM leaders come out, they will be having the knowledge of urban tree and ITRI. So specifically. So there are some photos that we captured during our field work, and you can see lots of colorful and vibrant people we worked. And we received a lot of media coverage also, including the USAID Bangladesh page, US Embassy, and national and local newspapers. So our fieldwork, it was not only challenging, a lot of food. Whenever we went to the field, suppose a plot is in the rooftop of someone's building. So when we approach them, they most of them they warmly welcomed us with lots of food and snacks. So our team enjoyed it very much. And thank you very much. So. Back to you, Jason, if any of the participants have any questions.
Yeah, we do have a couple questions. That was great, Saad. It's great to see what you did there, and I think these questions from folks show that they are interested in doing similar things. So the first one we got was, is there any way that you could share the training manual you used to train folks in Dhaka?
Yeah, it's doable. Our training manual and the SOP, it's ready. It's kind of in the type setting. As firstly we worked on the report. It's now ready. Then the training manual and the SOP and the R script. These are on and with the designer now. So as soon as it's ready, I will share with you, Jason. So then so that it's can be available in the I3 website, so that others can use our experience also.
Yeah, that's great. We will put it on our international resources page. We'll make a Bangladesh spot there, and we can put all of that information. So yeah, and I don't know if everyone is interested in R scripts, but yeah, I'm interested to see what you do with that. So another question we had is, so you had 14 different stakeholders in the project. How did you get all those people to work together, and how long did that take?
So for us, it was kind of at the very beginning, it was very hard to check all the stakeholders together. But when we worked, our technical team was led by the Bangladesh Forest Department, and they are the mandated from the Bangladesh government for any tree-related work. So it was kind of helpful for us to get their full support. And within their banner, we invited all the stakeholders and the city corporations. So luckily, we got some engineers over there that were very helpful and knowledgeable, and they were interested in especially the urban greening works. So that made our journey very easy. And some organization, the Green Saver, like the Arsan Roni Bhai, he was also very instrumental in arranging this consultation. So what we did when the field work was on the go, and we individually, despite alongside with the centralized stakeholder meeting, we individually met with each and every organization and their leadership to motivate them what we can achieve with the urban tree inventory, how we can better engage our communities and our government people. So and that was the key thing that we did.
So it sounds like kind of those personal meetings with individual groups and the stakeholder meeting were pretty important. Anan wants to know if you have published any results or research papers from this work?
Our report is ready, but currently we are working on writing the scientific article from this one, and so that the international folks can get the idea, and especially the experts and technical person can get the idea what we did here. So, but our in the report we also did some review works. Dr. Mahmouda Sharmin is here. She's a professor in SAST, Shah Jalan University. She was also one of our reviewer for this report. So
yeah, that's great. Yeah, we can share that report too when we share the other materials as well. And the last question we have right now, and maybe this is the tricky one, but where did the funding come from for this project?
So the funding, in most of the cases, for the technical support, we received in-kind support because it's all about uh, kinds of motivations. So how we motivated them to engage with this movement. And for the fieldwork, the other technical stuff, the inventory equipment we received from the Bangladesh Forest Department. So it's already there. And for the field work and enumerator and day-to-day work during the and other logistics. So we received funding from the USAID through the Compass program that is being implemented by USD Forest Service international programs in Bangladesh.
Yeah. So again, it seems like it comes back to your partners for how you can get the equipment and the people and the time you need to do all that work. So yeah, that's great to hear. And yeah, thanks for sharing your experience. Hopefully you can stick around for a little bit in case there's any more questions. But yeah, as always, thanks for telling us what's happening in Dhaka and your use of iTree. It's great.
Yeah.
And I think I'll hand it over to Krista to talk a little bit about the Colima project from Mexico.
Sure. Thanks, Jason. And I think I can do this relatively quickly. What we want to do is go ahead and talk, in addition to what we just heard from Sahadeb, we want to think about just looking at other ways that folks have done this. And what I like about Sahadeb's approach is that what we can hear from that project is the amount of collaboration and time and person power that was involved in not only accomplishing the task, but as we mentioned, making sure that it could be adequately funded, and that people had what they need. And all of those points became became other ways of collaborating, right? One of the things that Sadeb told us was that they were able to access capacity building skills across, these networks and through the collaboration in that project. And where I'm going to transition next is to some of the similar results or other ways that folks have thought about the results of their iTree projects, specifically with Fabiola Lopez and our partners in Mexico. We've heard from Fabiola earlier in this academy about a number of things, about her work to put together, full country incorporating Mexico and fully integrating a country into a program like iTree Eco. So she has Fabiola came to this work that we're going to look at in Colima. She came to that having done a lot of eco projects. She had already, worked on the ground with other people, and was able to sort of, take this step where they could think about how it would impact, again, that community outreach aspect as well as some programming. So they worked with a university planning institute, essentially in Colima, which allowed them to essentially access some volunteers. And the reason that can become important is that, yes, one of the questions we think about is how many people, how big is the scope of this project? So what are the things that I'm going to need to successfully work with iTree, whether it's Eco or a different tool where I am. So access to those students and volunteers did end up making things a lot easier. The objective in this case was to complete an inventory for the municipality, which was intended to aid the creation of a city tree management plan. So they wanted to understand more about the green spaces that they had within their municipal region and to understand or take a look at the benefits and the other information they could tease out along the lines of some of the things that Jason showed us earlier in the reporting data that's available to help them in putting together this urban tree inventory for these spaces. So in Colima, they took a double approach. They had two phases to this project. They were looking at what, for the sake of simplicity, we'll call larger parks, larger green spaces, and then smaller spaces, which they, took together to look at some cluster sampling results, which I'll talk about in a minute. But that was just strictly done as a way to think about, more than a certain number of hectares, we're going to call these smaller spaces, so that we can look at the big spaces a little bit more comprehensively. What that ended up meaning was that they were collecting information from parks of all sizes in order to see what percent of canopy cover these parks represented, but they were also able to do a sample plot approach for those bigger park spaces, which allowed them to do some stratification, and we'll be able to see those results. But then they were able to do a complete inventory across their smaller parks, which again accessed this sort of other cluster model, but it was able to divide up their work into manageable pieces in a way that they could use all, more than one feature of eco to take a look at this, specific to their needs. So they went ahead and assessed, the plot variables that we can see here, the tree variables and plot variables, just in terms of, we've talked about how to set up and configure your inventories and whether or not, you're going to look, at all of the available variables particular to either your complete inventory or your plots. So they were trying to make sure they had an understanding of the land use where they were when they were looking at these plots, but they then definitely pulled together several of the variables needed to look at the trees pretty extensively. So they actually saw really positive results. They recorded 154 different species across these urban green spaces, and they were able to see a good diversity of composition. One of the reporting features that Jason talked to us about was how you can start to look at the structure of your urban canopy and break down what it is you can see from either, species distribution and that diversity, which is, helpful to your canopy, but also then to start to distinguish in between different species and what kinds of benefits they might specifically represent in terms of seeing which trees are providing, might you want to manage differently so that those benefits continue to grow. So no one species actually represented more than 10% of all species across these spaces. So that was, good for them to see. And they actually had a single, she's noticing that there was one genus that did exceed about 10%, and it came in around 11%. But that actually was two different species from that genus. She's made that mental note. And Kallima was able to then access all of these results, right? So these are for about 21,000 trees across all of these spaces that they looked at. Benefits on this page in particular are annual benefits, with the exception of storage, which is representing the carbon being stored in these trees to date. But they were able to put these amount values and then dollar values on these benefits, all of which came together to help them provide some information to impact this management plan, this tree plan for Kallima. And looking at the distribution of benefits across a couple of different municipal zones, this was where Jason was talking to us about how you might stratify. And they were trying to just straight up see which of these community areas are displaying higher benefits, which ones are showing benefits that aren't quite as strong being generated by trees. So they were better able then to identify areas that they might want to focus on for potential planting and overall management strategies. So with respect to species diversity, which again, they were seeing was pretty good. The higher benefits that we're seeing specifically across these northern communities, so that helped them to, the northern communities as opposed to the southern communities, that helped them basically, help them with strategies for addressing what they then could see as gaps. So where do we want to strengthen benefits? What might we want to focus on planting some of these trees that we know are providing better benefits? In particular, the project noticed that the tree people in the room can help me if I say this wrong, but the cyclocarpum tree, which was actually, it's not a tree that grows very high. More familiarly, I think it's the elephant ear tree because of the little pods that it produces. But basically, what they were able to show was that it was a really good benefit producer with respect to the green spaces that they were looking at. So that was one of the things that they could talk about when they were, making information available to speak to this tree plan, which were then included in the city of Colima. So this is, in terms of broadening that picture, locations and municipalities that have been using iTree across Mexico. And again, Mexico as a country was fully integrated to iTree Eco in 2018. It's not a small amount of work to do that, but when we talk about country integrations, what it means is that different locations have been taught about this stuff, but somebody is usually doing a lot of work to network together all of those variables that we need behind the scenes from the tree data, so the weather and the pollution data. But a lot of what helped ECO take hold and be available for all of Mexico was the team there, and our partners there spent a lot of time teaching others how to use this tool. So that was, and one of the things that Sahadeb was telling us as well was the ability to access, to take some of these projects and impact other plans, to talk to others about how to manage these ideas in municipalities and to use them for community engagement, right? If you have community advocates that you can partner with and help them spread the word, if you will, or, to help others understand better how focusing on trees can bring improvements on a number of different levels. So again, there are ways that, they took this to even specific neighborhoods. The San Marcos neighborhood in Merida, one of the things there they were interested in looking at was these perceptions. So they took some time to survey people about their opinions, and then they did like a little trial project. Once they had the results, again, that community engagement process where they went back to people and said, now that we've engaged a little bit about these ideas, have your perceptions adjusted? And in some cases, they absolutely did. They adjusted for the better. So just finally, these are, a really nice, this is a nice slide that Fabiola put together for us, with respect to her work and just the different ways that an iTree project can really bring together your networks in a couple of different ways. So we know that sometimes you're talking to communities, you're talking to other practitioners. That ability to educate others can really go a long way towards making the work available. And again, maybe changing some of those perceptions if you're able to do that. But that idea of understanding that information about the structure and the benefits and the value of your trees, we talk about that at a high scientific level sometimes, but as you work your way through a project, what you can really start to see is how that work is going to facilitate, it can facilitate much differently and more collaborative efforts for effective management. And so with that, what I want to do is turn this back over to Anna and Jason. We're going to talk just a little bit more about where you can be sure to find resources on our website, and to think about our action plans moving forward.
Yeah, thanks, Krista. Yeah, I'll hand this over to Anna real quick here in just a minute. But yeah, I think hopefully people are getting the idea that we're trying to present a bunch of examples of ways to use iTree to get you thinking of how to sort of turn your iTree projects and your iTree applications into results. So Anna's just going to show us a few more examples, and then I will close out just setting the stage for next week and wrapping up the Academy. So go ahead, Anna.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk about a couple projects that I was not directly involved in, but that I've learned about that I thought were interesting. And I'm calling them interdisciplinary uses of iTree. So, you know, a lot of the examples that I went over are pretty direct, right? Like, well, this is, you know, these are the benefits and how do you communicate those things. But these couple projects are kind of delving more into maybe the human dimensions aspects of it, and even the arts and things like that. So again, these aren't projects that you would exactly go replicate where you are, because they are very community driven, very place based. But I thought they were interesting to highlight. So the first example is from the University of Dundee Botanic Garden Tree Asset Evaluation. So Dundee, Scotland, and they have this really beautiful botanic garden that they were interested in doing a eco assessment, including both the botanic garden and the university campus. So they, you know, did a complete inventory, and you know, they found they had 1,378 trees, and you know, we're looking at their tree diversity. So they were, you know, thinking about the future and kind of the vulnerability of their trees. So, you know, Scotland is not the most diverse place, but they felt that they had good diversity in their tree species, and felt, you know, identified some of those potential pests that we talked about, you know, and were able to get their eco analysis that shows that they got over 22,000 euros in from their trees. But what was, you know, interesting in kind of their holistic approach to this assessment was that they really wanted to, they have this idea of a living lab and thinking about involving the students. So they had a lot of the students actually participate in measuring the trees. And as part of the result, they, of course, the students got to learn about the benefits of trees, but they actually found that a lot of the trees and the benefits were on the botanic garden and not on campus, despite the campus being bigger and, you know, a place where really most of the students and most of the people associated with the university are spending time. So I don't know about you all, but I was very stressed when I was a college student, and you know, it started a lot of conversations about mental well-being, and this idea of, you know, that spatially the benefits and the trees were on the botanic garden, but the most of the people are on campus. So thinking about how the university might actually direct more of their resources to planting and taking care of the trees on the campus. And they also, being a university, have wider goals, right, around resilience. And, you know, they have this statement that a university asset where nature-based solutions, conservation of biodiversity, and human well-being are being explored using STEM together with art, which is a new term for me, gaining evidence base for external investigations within the living lab. So again, thinking about how this botanic garden and the university, the impact of this goes beyond, you know, this place, and thinking about, again, well-being and how this garden and the university can be a place also for the community. So they have this really cute picture with you know, these children that they're bringing in, and they're going to co-design a wee forest as part of an outdoor learning space. So again, this was in line of how they use their eco results to kind of, in the context of being a place of research and education, and a place that is open to the community, and kind of moving beyond just understanding the economic impacts. And the next example I wanted to highlight is Aula Verde Aniene, which is, it's in Italian, and it's a climate art project that was established in Rome, Italy. So this is led by an artist named Andreco, who conceived this idea of having on Earth Day, where these people went out and planted these trees in this design that he conceived, where you have these concentric circles that people, you know, participated in planting the trees, but they also, as the trees grow, it will become kind of a place that people can go experience his his idea of an art installation, a living art installation, and experience forest bathing, which is an idea that, spending time in forest and around nature is really important for well-being. And, in a very built up place like Rome, Italy, that can be, hard to achieve in a place that, to find some solitude. So not only did they do this installation where people got to go and plant trees, they also did an iTree Eco project for these trees where obviously these saplings were pretty small, but they forecasted the ecosystem service benefits that these trees are going to provide to the people of Rome. And they also wrote up this concept as part of a Nature article, really showing how urban forestry and art and advocacy and well-being and all these things can coexist to, they titled it as a link between art and science to raise public awareness of nature-based solutions. So really high-level stuff that is beyond my expertise, but this came from, a collaboration of people in the arts and that are thinking about how these things are related, both in the, like I said, the ecosystem services in an environmental sense, but also in a cultural sense. And these projects and a lot of the, the templates and the infographics that I've shared are on this page beyond the written report. So you can go and see them there. And another way that I actually find out about projects such as these is through LinkedIn. So if you are all active on LinkedIn, do give us a follow and you can kind of keep in touch with us. And if you have a project or that you'd like to share with us, this is a great way to you can tag us and engage with us. And, we love to amplify your stories and hear about what you're doing. So, yeah, I just wanted to share those two ones that I thought were kind of different and, hopefully out of the box thinking about, how you can kind of harness your strengths and what's important for your community and, the cultural context that you all exist in and your different parts of the world. That's it.
That was great. Thanks, Anna. I'm going to try and share my screen real quick here as we wrap up. So hopefully you can see my PowerPoint's slide.
Yes, action plan
Uh,
example.
Yep. So yeah, that was great. I think just one last thought for you to have in your head before you work on your action plans a little bit is that there are a really wide variety of ways to use iTree Eco, and we enjoy hearing about all the different ways that people do. So please do, if you're interested in following us on LinkedIn, it's a great way to see some of these things as we see new ones come on board. So just to wrap up our session here, this is session 7. We've got one more session. Session 8 will be in 2 weeks, and session 8 is one of my favorite ones. It is actually an opportunity for you all to present your action plans to the rest of the group. So in order to get us there, please submit your action plans by Friday. By the end of the day on Friday, we have the template. The template for the action plan looks just like this. You just need to fill it out and submit it to info@itreetools.org. And again, do that by this Friday, the 14th. And the other thing, from all the action plans we get, we will reach out to some of you to present your action plans next week. So we'll probably have 5 or 6 folks or groups submit their action plans. We also have a template for the slides there. That template is super brief. It's just 3 slides. You can make it a little longer if you want to. We'll just ask you to present your ideas, how you are planning on using iTree in your location. Take about 10 minutes. We'll have a few minutes for discussion after each presentation. And like I said, hopefully we'll get through 5 or 6 of those. So you don't have to do this template unless we reach out to you and you are willing to present your action plan. But when you submit those action plans, let us know if you're interested in presenting. And just to sort of show you an example of what one of these presentations looks like, this was a presentation from Ku Yen, who was in our academy back in 2022, I think, or 2021. She worked at a school. They had some trees on the school campus, and she wanted to explore how to use iTree in their teaching. So her action plan describes that. She talked a little bit about her school, a little bit about her background, and how she envisioned iTree fitting into their curriculum. So it was a really nice way. And again, a little different than kind of those big citywide projects, which can have a whole lot of utility as well. but a little more localized down to this individual school level. So again, we're not looking for a whole ton of work for you in presenting these things. We just want to hear your ideas and spark a little bit of discussion about how to put iTree to work. Again, these are the rest of the slides. Again, it's just 2 or 3 slides, really easy. And just kind of lastly, to wrap this up, do get those action plans in. Those are due on Friday. And if you want to present, just let us know. Again, we're taking a week off next week, and those presentations will be on the 26th of February, so 2 weeks from today. So you do have some time to put together those really brief presentations. And the very last thing, we need your name. So we will be giving out certificates of completion when we finish up the academy. So if you've been doing the homeworks and attending the sessions, we want to make sure we get you those certificates and we have your name correct on them. So please email us the name you would like on your certificate to info@itreetools.org. And if you are in a group leaders, please email us all the names you want us to use in a single email. Excuse me, in a single email, just so we don't get tons of emails in that. So again, thanks everyone for attending all these sessions. Hopefully we got to all the questions, and we will definitely have a little more time for discussion and questions next session. And yeah, thanks again for your time. Thanks so much, Sahadeb, for presenting from Bangladesh. Thanks to the rest of the team. And we will see everyone else in 2 weeks. And we look forward to seeing your action plans. Thanks, everybody. See you soon.